Okay, so today guys, I am here in sunny Barcelona, but this is not where I'll be spending my day on the beach, because in about an hour's time, I'll be registering for the €888 main event here at Ace Live Barcelona. As you'll know guys, I've never cashed one of these before, but I have managed to secure some hopefully profitable swaps, most notably with Aaron Barone that I have a lot of high hopes for. But since I've never liked the sun anyway, we are gonna go head into the card room and play some poker. Let's go.
So into the main event, and after folding for literally 75 minutes, we're into the mix for the first time. A recreational opens things up under the gun to 800, and I'm frothing at the mouth to see Queen Jack of clubs and under the gun +1, 3-betting to 2500. As expected, he does call, which we don't mind at all, being in position versus this type of player. The flop is favourable, ace 10-6 with a club, and after he checks, I go for a pretty standard c-bet of 2200. He calls after not too long, and we're off to a bricky looking turn, which is the 3 of hearts. I haven't played a pot all day, let alone 1-1, and this seems like a pretty good opportunity to do so. I load the gun and barrel, shooting for something geometric, but I overdo it a little bit with 13k into 10k. Not the end of the world, and it has the desired effect of folding out the 8-7 suited after a short tank. The idea was also to get folds from 10x, but given how reluctant he was to pass this, I think that wouldn't have gone so well. Anyway, we won a bloody pot, rejoice. Unfortunately, I had to go back to folding and we were off feature, ready to do our plums on the outer tables. Another what feels like a decade passes before I'm allowed to play again, this time 3-betting 9s out of the small blind to 5,000 after an open from hijack to 1200. They call and we're off to King 5 with 2 clubs, I c-bet 3200 and they fold. You might be wondering why this is in here, and it's because it's one of the 3 pots that I won in this main event, and it's about as exciting as it got. A pretty interesting one up next as the hijack opens to 1600 at 400, 800, and I 3-bet the button with 10s to 5k. Ian Simpson decides it's time to shove his remaining 40k, and I'm getting ready to lose an all-in, but then the initial raiser re-bangs it in and I probably just have a fold. I reluctantly let it go, and shock, the geezer has aces, leaving Ian's ace-3 of spades in rough shape. The dealer did have a little needle ready for me though on the flop.
That's me. So sick.
Oh, queen. Just a little queen. Oh, wasn't a queen? Nice then.
Had a full house.
So we missed the chance to have chunks, bleed down to piss all, and then attempt to find a spot for our money. We do find it, picking up ace queen and shoving for our last 11k, and get called by a gentleman with 2 7s. I'm about done with this shit and ready to go, but a cheeky queen on the turn saves my tournament, and Ian is quick to point out that I've won a flip.
10p, bro.
20p now.
Fuck's sake. Hey Ian, don't tell anyone about that.
It wasn't long until we were at risk again, of course, as I decide to take my chance with the 6-5 suited in the hijack, and the button wants a count.
Loads. Mucho.
He eventually rejams, and we're off to the races.
All in.
Oh, yeah.
Very best of luck, sir. Oh, I've got such a good hand against that. Oh, how can you possibly win this? You can't win this.
You win.
I know I win. No, I've already won. Oh, maybe. No, I'm not sure. Close. Hang on, maybe. Oh, no, fuck it. Never mind.
Mira que el momento que ha sido a tirar all-in.
It was very close. It was very close. I had 6 high and he had a full house.
Vaya momento 5-6. Venga, ¿esa te ha gustado?
All right, guys. Well, that has gone somehow even worse than I expected. I think I played 2 hands in 7 hours. None of them are remotely interesting. So this is now officially a cash game vlog in Barcelona. The weather's lovely, you know, the beach, amazing, bars along the seafront. But what am I gonna do instead for you guys? I'm gonna go and play some 1-3 against some Spanish whoppers. Full disclosure, I've already played 1 session. It's gone not amazingly, I must say. I haven't covered myself in glory, as per usual. But now, look, I'm going back. We're gonna have another go at 1-3 and see if we can get ourselves out of the hole. I'm still feeling good. I'm sure we can turn this around. I'm heading back to the casino now after a quick lunch break, recharge the batteries, breathe in some seafront air, and it's time to get back in the mix. Let's go.
Up first, we have a perfect hand to demonstrate the quality of opposition here in Barcelona, as we're dealt aces in the hijack and I open things up to €10. Just the cutoff is interested in the form of a call, and we're off to a flop, which is Queen Jack 3 rainbow. I decide to start out with a small bet of €6, which he calls, and the turn is the Jack of spades, bringing it back to a flush draw. Betting here is probably best, but on this occasion I do check, which seems reasonable enough, and he checks it back. The river's the 8 of clubs, and it's obviously time to get some value, so I bet about 2/3 pot, 25 into 38, and the geezer looks at his cards, takes about 10 seconds, and goes for the click to 50 euros. My unenthused response to this was a product of not having been exposed to the tomfoolery going on in these cash games, and not being able to remember the last time I got bluffed in a spot like this.
Fucking hell. 10-9, pocket 8, 50, fucking hell.
My opponent flips over the very unlucky ace-8 offsuit for the I don't know what, and we take down a little pot to get us going. Our optimism, though, is quickly thwarted in this next hand as the undergun player opens to 12 euros, the button calls, and I look down at jacks in the small blind. Squeezing is the only appropriate course of action, and so I do, to the tune of 62 euros, and the undergun player doesn't take very long to stick it in for his last 140. We, of course, have to call, and the news isn't good.
Once or twice?
We can do twice? You have a pair?
Yeah.
Big? Yeah. Okay. You're good right now.
He tells us he has a big pair, both boards are full of total boogs, and we pay the man his money. Back in the hole where we belong. This next hand is absolutely class. After the cut-off limps, I ISO kings to 15 euros and he calls. The flop is 9-9-8 with 2 hearts, a classic donking spot for cut-off after limp calling, and so he does for 20 euros. I think calling, allowing for any nonsense, is the best play, especially against this sizing, so we flick in the 20 and take a turn, which is the queen of clubs. He now busts out some more moves, betting 20 again. There's definitely an argument to be made for raising here, but again, I elect to just call and see what develops. There's a few rivers I don't want to see though, and I'd say the ace of diamonds qualifies as one of those. There's now 114 euros in the pot, and my first thought is that I really don't want to see a bet, so I can tap the table behind and maybe beat a random pair. But after 30 seconds passes, he still hasn't done anything and looks really unsure. When fish do this, it's not normally value because it's very clear to them when they have a good hand that wants to bet. They also have no idea how to size a value bet anyway, so they aren't usually thinking about that either. In my experience, fish tanking for this long and then betting is almost always a bluff, and as we approach the minute mark, he finally plucks up the courage to toss out a bet of 80 euros. By this point, I was wishing he'd bet bigger and pretty much beat him into the pot. In a shocking turn of events, he has got piss all and mucks his hand, leaving us marginally back in the green. Nice. As you can see, there's some quality play going on here in Barcelona this weekend, and I'm having a great time. This time around, we open 8-7 of spades under the gun, and both the button and the big blind come along for the ride. The flop is king 10-3 with 2 spades, and after the big blind checks, I decide to start out with a bet of 11 euros. Both of them call, so we're going to need some help, which we sort of get in the form of the 7 of clubs. Another clear donking spot here, and the big blind isn't going to miss it, firing out 19 euros. I can only call, I think, so I do, and the button folds. The river is ideal, the 9 of spades giving us a flush. He's only got about 120 left, and this time he sizes up to 20 euros. Obviously, we're all in and never losing in this spot, but we just have to hope that the Spanish fella has got something he wants to flick in. Unfortunately, he doesn't, and we have to settle for another small one. In what is probably the most interesting and normal hand of the trip, the button, a player who I've not seen much of yet, opens the button to 10 euros, and I look down at ace-king in the big blind. I 3-bet to 46, which I think is a bit small, but not a huge deal, and he calls. The flop is 8-8-5 rainbow, and I decide to start out with just over half pot, 55 into 93, and he calls again. The turn is the queen of hearts, which is a pretty good card for me overall. I'm thinking I'll be wanting to bet this turn pretty often, and this should do a decent job of folding out things like 5-4, 6s or 7s, and of course stuff like jack-10 suited that has a pretty good chunk of equity against my hand. I go for about 40% pot, betting 75 into 213, and unfortunately he calls once again. I have around 80% pot back for the river, which is a 4 of diamonds. 7-6 completes, but maybe he folds the turn, so I don't think it's an awful card to shove. I spent some time wondering whether this just needs to be followed through, as I'm not sure what else I'd really be bluffing here. In general, I'm very adverse to trying to get random players, particularly Spanish ones, to fold stuff, especially on a kind of bricky looking river that they will perceive not to change much for them. I decide I'm maybe getting called too often here, as he does certainly have some very decent hands like Queen X and some 8s, and if I assume that he folds 6s and 7s on the turn, then I'm not that hopeful for too many laydowns in this spot. I could also maybe beat some backdoor nut flush draws that decide not to bluff the river, so I do give up, and on this occasion he quickly checks back with 7s, which feels pretty ugly, but I don't think I mind this hand too much overall. Still, we do take a hit and our profits are depleted. Up next, I open queen 10 of clubs under the gun and get 3-bet by some sort of reg, I think. He makes it 30 euros, and in the wise words of Benabad Beat, I've not come all this way to fold queen 10 suited. We call and the flop is Jack, Jack 10. Easy check for me, obviously, and I'm somewhat surprised to see a check back since it seems a pretty reasonable spot for imposition to bet everything. The turn is bricky, the 2 of hearts, and I'm feeling like I have the best hand pretty often, likely facing something like 9s or ace king. Betting therefore makes some sense, but I err on the side of caution and check it over again to see what's going on. He checks back again, which leads me to believe I'm almost always good, but the river isn't the greatest I've ever seen, the 9 of spades. 9s get there, as does king queen, and I wondered whether this should prevent me from throwing out a little block ski. It doesn't this time, and I block for 21 into 64, and I absolutely hate my life when he makes it 85. Looking at this now, I think it's sickly underbluffed, but I had seen this player do some spicy stuff so far, and he seemed happy to do his bollocks. I did, however, wonder out loud whether he just had aces, as that seemed to fit pretty nicely as well with the player profile.
Aces?
I actually think there's a lot to be said for 3-bet jamming this hand on the river, blocking the most prominent slow plays in Jack 10 and 10s, and almost every hand that plays this way is going to be extremely displeased. Unfortunately, I don't think he has enough back for a play this spicy, so I just flick it in and lose to aces instead. A couple of top-notch hands against a Spanish whopper coming up now to finish our cash game segment. Much the same as last year's Barcelona vlog, come to think of it. Undergun makes it 10, our whopper calls, and I squeeze the button with ace-5 of hearts to 50 euros. I think calling here is just going to be better, going multi-way in position with multiple whop jobs, but obviously this is going to be fine too. Only the hijack whopper calls, and the flop is decent for me, I'd say. King 5-4 with 2 spades. When he checks, I can't think of any reason not to bet for a small size, and I go for 35 euros into the 114 euro pot, and he calls pretty quickly. The turn is the 9 of clubs, and he checks over again. I think my hand is a pretty great candidate for a double barrel, since this guy has been pretty splashy and could have a lot of hands that don't like seeing a bet here. I also block some of his very best hands in 5-4 suited and pocket 5s, which is at least somewhat relevant. Not to mention being out the way of things like 6s through 10s that should certainly fold. Careful calculations out of the way, I bet 80 into 184, and the geezer absolutely fist pump jams. Seriously, listen to how long it took this dude to stick it up me for 250 total. I'm not remotely a fan of developments, but I do some brief math to figure out if I have to just stick it in. It's only 170 more, and there are some flush and straight draws available, but by the speed of the jam, I think it's fair to mostly rule these out. He also checks his hand 3 times, which usually indicates strength from a fish. I reluctantly fold, and my friend Barry in seat 1 makes a really strong read on my hand.
Ace king? Ace king? Ace king.
What did you got on the turn though?
A bluff, obviously.
The very next orbit, we are back at it again with the same opponent. The low jack opens, our hijack whopperoo calls, the cutoff calls, and I'm on the button with ace 10 of hearts. I make a pretty feeble squeeze to 36 euros, but it's enough to get everyone out of the way except our friend. Another pretty good flop in a 3-bet pot, this time king king 10 with 2 spades. He checks and I toss out another small bet, 31 euros into 92. Let's count the hang time on this one.
What the fuck? How much is that? What the fuck?
495.
To his credit, he did spend at least a couple more seconds this time before jamming nearly 500 euros over my 31 euro bet. I guess since we are here, we should at least think about it, and it does at least result in some fun table conversation.
What the fuck are you doing?
I going.
Huh?
Later to the hand, I going. You fold?
No, I've got cards. This is so dumb. I'm not convinced anyone else deals with this shit. Why? Just have ace jack of spades.
Tiempo. Mesa uno.
Now, at this point, I've taken barely 90 seconds, and the geezer on my left, who's not exactly been swift all night, clocks me. Given the size of the bet and the hand that I've just played against this guy, I decide that it's pretty unreasonable. Since I'm already tilted, this guy's timing isn't great. Naturally, I take it very well.
I'm going to use all of it, just for you.
Tiempo.
Is there a clock? Is there a clock? No?
You can think
Thank you.
A very good decision by the floor, who decides not to put me on the clock. I have to say this room is very well run, no matter how much I'm doing it off. I decide to not waste the floor's time and just fold before the clock starts, even though I'd have loved to piss off the guy that called it. He shows the 9 of spades and tries to pass it off as pocket 9s that's owned me, but I imagine he would have windmilled both of them if that was the case. King 9 of clubs seems to make a lot of sense, but I was never really interested in calling anyway. And with that, my enthusiasm for playing more has dwindled sufficiently to entice me to enter a tournament instead. Yes, it's that bad. Not just that, but Max late regging a turbo structure. The closer is always played on the last day of these 8-state live events, and at 165 euros, me and Barry decide to flick it in and swap 25%. The main reasons I wanted to get involved were because some of the play in these things are hilarious, and because I hadn't been able to tell the dealer I was all in a sufficient amount for my liking over the course of the trip, and it was time we rectified that. It did not disappoint. First up, we're on the small blind with 14 bigs, and I'm delighted to see it fold to us before peeling back ace-9 offsuit. The big blind has only got about 7 bigs left, not that it would have made a difference to what I was doing.
I'm all in, dealer. I'm all in.
All in.
Big blind calls off his ace-4 off, and there's no help anywhere for the poor lad. It's a decent start up to 23 bigs. Let's see what we can do. Next up, we peel queens after a limp of 1k, and I bump it up to 4k. I didn't think there would be much limp folding, but unfortunately this time there is. Doesn't matter too much though, as we had some more chips, now at 26 bigs that we're about to use all of. We're picking up some early heat, this time looking down at a couple of 10s. I'm buzzing to get them in if possible, and it looks like we'll be able to do exactly that. The undergun player opens, and undergun 1 flicks in a call for about a quarter of his stack, before the next player to act snap bangs in 10k as well. I'm proper excited, and it's that time again.
25,200, dealer. I'm all in.
All in.
Dealer, what's he saying? Is he saying anything about his hand, dealer? No?
Good luck, everybody. What's he got? 6-5? 10, 6-5 on his shot. Yeah. That's me, I think. How much have they got? That's decent. It's not a bad pot, you know. I've never done that before. Let me take.
Thank you, dealer.
We scooped a lot after a dicey flop and suddenly have over 40k in 40 big blinds, always rated tournaments. This hand is pretty class, you know. I've been moved tables and I'm soon dealt aces under the gun. I make it 4,000 to go, hoping for the best, and the best is what we get. It falls to the cutoff, and he is not pissing about.
Well, I'm first to act. I want to make it 4,000, please, dealer. 4,000. Call.
King 7 suited. Oh, please.
Definitely going to lose this one. Oh, that's a good flop. That's a good flop.
3-6.
I think you're good. I think you're okay.
Cover him.
Man, it just save your day.
Is that what you bought?
I have 3-6 suited.
Oh, well, what are you going to do? Call, bro?
And just like that, we've got about 80k and there's only 3 tables left. 15 get paid, so we will need some more help, but I'm above average and very healthy. There's also the small matter of 5 bags up top and a trophy, so that's the aim if we can. A few orbits go by without any drama before I'm dealt ace-10 of diamonds on the cutoff with 2 tables left. I've got 55k at big blind 5k, so there's not much to this one. Good luck.
All in, dealer? 55.
Everyone folds and our head is safely above water for the time being. We'll probably just need to win 1 big all-in. We're still at big blind 5k when some geezer opens to 45k under the gun. Pretty standard. I've only got 60k, so not much to think about, and obviously we are going to be at risk.
All in, dealer?
The big blind then starts asking a few questions before popping his last 25k in, and the initial raiser obviously snaps it off, and it's a big 3-way all-in with about 17 left for near chip lead. I'm not very good at these, but just maybe.
Queens against jacks against ace king. 3 is good as well. Okay, GG.
And it's gone. A 3-way all-in for a shot at glory, but we tidily brick it off, and we're off to the rail. I thought about playing a bit more cash, but I was feeling a bit run down from the week and the exploits of the tournament, so I decided to call it a trip. Next up for me is Las Vegas and the fucking main event, which I'm lucky enough to be playing again this year, and I'll be making vlogs around it as well. I won't be playing any side events like I did last year, so I can give my full focus to the main since it's such a draining tournament, but I'm absolutely buzzing and I hope to give it a really good go. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon from Vegas.